Ladies and gentlemen, what a way to kick off today's Sports Report show on Sportinarium, the #1 global radio station. And we've got the best in the business when it comes to high flyers to recap all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling each and every week with us. And Rey Mysterio, Kidman, AJ have nothing on him. He is one of the best in the business in such a short amount of time. He has done so much, and now he's one of the top analysts around, and he's the #1 analyst when it comes to all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. And without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, our Pod of Wrestling, Jackson My friend, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Gotta say, that is the #1 intro in all of wrestling right now, with the #1 sports radio host, the Reverend Thomas Price. Thank you very much, man. It's an absolute pleasure to be back. And you know I love coming here talking to you, so thank you very much. The intro again, as usual, better than anything that Paul Heyman's spitting out these days, and he's at the top. So.
Listen, Paul Heyman at this point, I don't think he has a voice much left these days. I don't think he can pull off that voice. He's got that sort of low voice, baritone. My client, Roman Reigns. I think that's kind of Paul at this point. Paul's not screaming. Like when I was growing up in ECW, where you get Paul scream in front of the camera and he would yell and groan. And we're not getting that Paul anymore. So Paul Heyman has nothing on the Sports Report, at least when it comes to introductions. I would hope we would be more in Justin Roberts or Bruce Buffer UFC territory. But Jackson, it's good to have you back, my friend. There's a lot to talk about once again when it comes to all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. And to kick things off, Fastlane, I don't know if it was exactly a Fastlane when it came to all the results and all the endings. And for our worldwide audience here on Sportinarium, I want to talk first about the main event between Roman Reigns and Daniel Bryan and your thoughts on how it shook out. And was it the ending that we thought we would get?
Yeah, I thought it was a very, very well-worked match, which is exactly what you kind of expected from these two guys in the roles that they're in as well. Very, very 5-star main event caliber type match. I quite like the inclusion of Edge and the role he played in that match with the interference and is he turning heel? What kind of happened there? And it was really interesting to me. And I kind of got what I wanted because I wanted to see a 3-0 Mania, and surely that this is what we're going to get. And I really like the match. The only thing I would say is I think there was a little bit too much of the kind of interference and stuff because Jey Uso, Edge, referee got knocked down every minute. I think it was a little bit overkill, but Edge costing kind of Bryan the match in a sense and Bryan making Reigns tap out. I really, really, really like that. And it kind of slots Bryan right exactly where I want to see him, which is in that main picture. And hopefully that's the 3-way that we all want to see. And it looks like Edge is going to be that kind of almost tweener role with Bryan as the babyface and Reigns as the heel. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Let me ask you a question when it comes to Daniel Bryan. If there wasn't that messy finish and if it wasn't that outside interference of Jey Uso and Edge you alluded to, who's sort of in this, I guess you could say, Bret Hart WrestleMania 13-ish situation.
Yes, very much.
He's not a heel. He's not a face. He's torn. He likes Daniel Bryan, but he's upset by Daniel Bryan's actions. If there wasn't that messy interference and finish, do you think Daniel Bryan could still possibly be in the main event in WrestleMania against these two?
But you know what? I definitely think yes, because I think there's a way of doing it where I think you can have Bryan lose that match. You can keep the inclusion of Reigns tapping out with the rest down if you want and get to that triple threat of Mania without the kind of all the schmoz and all the interference and it kind of being overkill in that way. I kind of wish they'd just clean that up because I think Bryan, even losing that match, there's definitely a way you could do a Bryan Edge match and Bryan beating Edge sends him to Mania, even something as simple as that. But I think it's definitely the right way they're going because I think, with Edge coming back, I think there was a lot of people coming saying, is he too old to be in this role? And Bryan Brian brought up a really great point, and that whole thing of, well, it should be me because I'm the guy who wrestles every week. These guys have wrestled once every 3 months or once a month in Reigns' case. I think that was a really great point, and it really hit home because it kind of made me think, yeah, actually, as much as Reigns and Edge would be a spectacle, I don't know if the match is going to pay off for me as much as having Brian in there, whether that be singles or obviously the way we're going now with this with the triple threat. And it really works to all their strengths. I think Edge always kind of naturally, if he's a face, be on that kind of dotted line because he's so close. I think he naturally kind of gears towards heel, even if he doesn't want to, just because that's who he is. And he's done that so well for the last few years. But obviously, the incredible redemption story, you know, he's in that face role, but it's not quite what we kind of want it to be. So I think it's perfect putting him in the tweener role, Reigns as that top heel, and then the babyface Brian that we've always wanted to see go to the main event of WrestleMania. So for me, it was really clicking. I just, you know, you could have done without the schmaltz and maybe change that a little bit.
Let me ask you this question, because obviously you've been in the ring, you've wrestled a lot of matches, so you understand what it's like to be in the ring, and you also understand a crowd. Did Daniel Bryan force his way into this scenario? Because if you think about it, Edge hasn't been in a big match like this in 10 years. Edge being in the ring, considering his injury, is a miracle. You would think just on that alone, that would be quite a story for WrestleMania, Edge versus Roman one-on-one. I mean, did Daniel Bryan force his way into this match, or was this predetermined from the beginning where Edge is still coming off a very significant injury? I mean, is this something predetermined, or did Daniel Bryan force his way into the main event?
See, it's a really great question. And I mean, to be honest, I feel his inclusion was always part of the plan because I know that they were gearing towards Bryan and Reigns for Mania. And then Edge kind of just operated that good space of, okay, who can win the Rumble? And the story just kind of put itself there. And it was a really great and well-told story. But I mean, I don't know if maybe this is a really unpopular opinion, but I was excited to see Edge back. I was excited to see him in the Rumble. Him versus Reigns, it's exciting. But like on a purely, like you said, if we're talking in the technical sense, I mean, he has been 10 years out and he came back and straight away he got injured, which is no fault of his own, of course, but he is in his late 40s and, you know, he's not wrestling all the time. Bryan is in the peak of his career and he's wrestling every week. So I feel if he did force his way, I don't think he necessarily did. Obviously, he's going to get the fan support because that's who he is. He's Daniel Bryan. But I think it was the best thing for this main event. It's a lot better off with him in it. That Edge-Reigns match would never be able to deliver as much as the Reigns, Bryan and Edge match because it's a lot of different kind of components there. They all have a very different style to each other. So that match is super exciting to me. Yeah, and I just think it probably is the best way to go. And I think they were planning that previously with Bryan and Reigns. I would have much rather seen Bryan Reigns at Mania actually than I would have seen Edge Reigns. But also, if this pays off into some sort of Bryan Edge match, then I'm all for it because I really want to see that singles. I think that would be incredible too.
Absolutely. And we're only a few short weeks away from WrestleMania. Listen, Jackson, I feel like for the last year I've been talking about WrestleMania 37. So we're finally excited to see WrestleMania and we're excited to see fans, the first WWE event that will have fans since the pandemic. So we're really excited to see how this plays out. And also another match on Fastlane that I was curious on your perspective on, and that was the tag team title match between Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler against Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, because it's not so much to me on the fact what the tag team title match results were, but it's more on now we've seen clear distance between Bianca and Sasha, and I think you could really tell now that there's some real friction between those two, and we're building up, I think, to something pretty special here when it comes to Sasha and Bianca. And your thoughts on that storyline now between Sasha and Bianca Belair?
I'm really enjoying it. I love all the segments they're doing with that kind of teasing even before Fastlane, that kind of teasing the dissension there. And, you know, are you up for the task, Bianca kind of saying to Sasha and things like that. And I really love where they're going. It's been really quite fresh, actually, to see them work together and play off each other in that way, that kind of competitive, friendly type relationship. And then now that they're getting closer to Mania, seeing them go full kind of, okay, like this is it. And I'm really, really looking forward to this match because they're both tremendous workers. Sasha Banks is easily one of the best women's wrestlers on the world and one of the best wrestlers, full stop. I think Bianca Belair is just, she has superstar in her veins. I mean, if there's anything you'd want in a star in wrestling, she has everything in every type of way to the highest level. And then, you know, for them, I really hope that they get the main event of the nights because they completely deserve it. They're both doing incredible mic work, incredible in ring work too. And obviously, it's a very nice thing as well that they're both two women of minority ethnic groups. And I believe that's never actually been done before in wrestling for a main event championship match. I'm fairly sure. So that would be a first as well. And if they get to main event, all the better. I'm super excited about what they're doing. It's some of the best work for both of them. So I'm really looking forward to it.
That's something interesting. And I want to get your perspective on it because obviously you're a wrestler. You understand the importance of a number of these different things. And you just said something that's interesting in that Bianca and Sasha, if they main event, in addition to them being women, they're minority wrestlers. And there's a significant importance to that because that's obviously not something we've seen before in the WWE or any wrestling promotion that's a major company. Do you think that if they are the main event, let's say of either Saturday night or Sunday night, that plays a role into that, or they are legitimately great wrestlers? And Sasha has been long overdue in being in this position, and Bianca, I think, has won the hearts of many wrestling fans over the past several months. So what's your perspective on that?
I think of that card, looking up and down that card, there's only two main events there. For me personally, there's Reigns, Edge, Daniel Bryan, or whatever that mixture will turn up to be. I think it'll be a triple threat. And Banks and Belair. Any other of those matches have the caliber to be a main event. And we're talking in-ring work, the story, and also the most important thing is, bottom line, the championship. And I think it's very long overdue. And not just because they're women to have main event slot, because of course they're that too. But I mean, they're two incredible wrestlers. Sasha Banks, like you said, has been doing some of the best work in wrestling. Like, if we're talking all-round work and like promos in ring, she nails every single beat. I've never seen her do a bad performance of either. And even storylines she's been given that aren't great, she pushes them to a higher level than they should have been. So seeing her in that role is long overdue. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying last week about seeing these women's wrestlers main events. And that's something that we need to see more of, and proving that, look, this is what they can do. They can draw because they're great wrestlers. It's not about male, female, none of that really. And even the minority ethnic, it's very nice to see. It's nice for me to see. It's nice for the fans to see as well. And it's a great thing in wrestling. It should have 100% already happened. But for me, it's about these two. If you look at Bianca Belair as an athlete, I don't know if there's any other athletes in WWE who are on her level, full stop, male or female. I mean, she is the absolute premier athlete of that business. She can do just about anything. And yeah, it'd just be really great to see these two incredibly hardworking, incredibly gifted wrestlers in the main event of their division for the championship at WrestleMania. It has to happen for me.
Absolutely. Listen, no question about it. And listen, Bianca is an incredible performer, and watching her WWE special on the WWE Network not too long ago after she won the Royal Rumble, I mean, you could tell that this person has something that really clicks with the audience. And I want to ask you this question, Jackson.
Yeah.
Because again, you're a pro wrestler. You've had a lot of success and you understand what it's like to be in the ring. And I don't want to bring up race, but I'll bring it up in the context that it might actually be important and significant for a number of different wrestlers that now are getting the spotlight. Bobby Lashley is the WWE champion. New Day are the Raw Tag Team champions. Sasha, we know, is the SmackDown Women's champion. Even if you want to throw in there Nia and Shayna, certainly Nia, I guess you could throw in there. And then obviously Big E being the Intercontinental champion. Do you think it's long overdue that we're seeing minority wrestlers be in the spotlight? Because I just named to you several names and they hold almost all the titles in the WWE. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
If I had to put it in a sentence, it would be, I love to see it. Honestly, but I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible. And I think, of course, it's a beautiful thing to see people of minority ethnic groups doing so well in the top business of professional wrestling across the world. Obviously, you have New Japan on a high level, you have AEW on a high level, you have Impact on a high level, but WWE is the benchmark. Everyone knows WWE. So to see them pushing wrestlers of ethnic groups to the forefront is, yes, it's very, very long overdue. But also it's very, I don't want to use the word groundbreaking because it shouldn't be groundbreaking, but I suppose in the industry of wrestling, in a sense, it is. And it's great to see. It really is. And the better thing is, when you look at people like Bobby Lashley, who has been working for 16 years, this man screams main event. This man screams everything you want in a wrestler. He's incredibly well-deserving. Do you know what I mean? All these people are incredibly well-deserving. They're the hardest workers. The New Day are very easily the best tag team of the last 10, 20 years. And if they're not of the 10, 20 years, they certainly are up in there for the conversation of all time as well. They're then 2, 3 of the best workers. Biggie Langston, again, he'll be the golden goose for WWE for years to come, I'm sure of it. Sasha Banks is the best women's wrestler in her division, and she's one of the best wrestlers on the planet. Bianca Belair, clearly this woman has had all bags of potential from the get-go, and it's a really great thing to see. I think, yes, to answer your question, it's very long overdue. It's very, very long overdue, and I wish we'd seen more of it in the past, and I wish we'd seen more representation in the past. But if all these people are hardworking and they're delivering great in-ring work, great promos, they have all the superstar talent, then that's exactly where they should be.
Hey, Jackson, I don't know if it was just timing or if it was just luck, but even I remember growing up, I mean, there was only a handful of minority, or let's say African-American wrestlers, and we're going to exclude Asuka because obviously we know Japan, we know the history with that and everybody there who's wrestled and had success. But if you think about it, when I was a kid growing up, you had Booker T. Booker T was obviously a guy in WCW, then later on in WWE. You had The Rock. You had Mark Henry later on. You had D'Lo Brown, if you want to throw him in. You really only had a handful of guys that you could say, all right, maybe they would hold the title. But I think now, finally, and I agree with you 100%, it shouldn't be groundbreaking because I've always been a wrestling fan all my life, and there was so many guys I liked. I didn't think, hey, they were minority or they were this. I just liked them because they could entertain it. And I think that we're seeing now that some of these wrestlers, it's well overdue and well deserved, especially in the case of Bobby Lashley. I've been a big fan of Bobby's since he first debuted in WWE. Big E's another guy who very early on in his career set the tone, obviously working with the likes of the John Cena and New Day. Kofi held the title not too long ago. So New Day, I agree with you, is right up there when it comes to all-time tag teams. And Sasha's already in the discussion as all-time great women's wrestlers. And she's probably going to be in the discussion one day of being in the top 10 to top 20 when it comes to all-time great wrestlers who wrestled at WWE. And Bianca, her athleticism speaks for itself. So there is a great list of talent. We are very happy that they are getting their due. And just like we're very happy that we have him here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, our Heart of Wrestling, Jackson Hart, who's now the #1 analyst in all of professional wrestling. So congratulations, Jackson. You've already broke the doors down and some, just like The Rock did and everybody else. And we're honored to have you on the Sports Report, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Bryson. For more information on the Sports Report, you can go to sportsreportx.com. And to listen to all of our archives, you can go to soundcloud.com/the Sports Report 2019 and subscribe now to our YouTube page at the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, where you can get Sports Report related content and all of our Sunday shows. And as always, a huge shout out to the entire team here at Sportinarium, including Lakey, Arv, Sean, who does a phenomenal job with the Sportinarium TV YouTube page, Dale, Dave, Susie, Sasha, Connor, Martin, Richie, Steve, Ryan, our old friend Mike Lipinski with the In the Fight show, everybody at Sportinarium that has made us the #1 global sports show. And for more information on Sportinarium, you can follow Sportinarium on Twitter and Instagram at Sportinarium. You can like Sportinarium on Facebook at Sportinarium Media. You can subscribe to the aforementioned Sportinarium TV YouTube page at Sportinarium TV. And most importantly, you can listen to the Sports Report Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. UK time on Sportinarium.com. That's Fridays to Sundays, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. UK time on Sportinarium.com. And also 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to the great Sportinarium content we have here on Sportinarium sportinarium.com. So in addition to the sports report, you want to check out all the great other shows here, including the Sunday Chill Out Sessions, Spartan Show, and everything else here. All that bracket and women's fight news. It is a great roster of talent that we have here in Sportinarium. We are very delighted to be a part of it, just as we are delighted to have on the sports report once again to kick off the Saturday show. That is the Heart of Wrestling, Jackson Hart, who in a short amount of time has already positioned himself to be one of the top wrestlers around, and we are certainly looking forward to the future of professional wrestling that Jackson will have to offer for us here later this year in 2021. Jackson, and going over to Raw, I mean, I got to bring it up because this is one of the more bizarre storylines that I've seen. We were talking about this off air, and I'm sure we were thinking, just as if most wrestling fans were thinking about it, what is going on with Braun Strowman and Shane McMahon?
Oh man! Oh, this storyline. Oh man! I mean, okay. I am kind of interested in the match of Braun Shane because Braun has his matches of his cool stunts and he always breaks everything, and that's really cool. And Shane's gonna throw himself off something really high up. So you get them two things together. I'm sure there'll be some great stunt work, and there'll be like there's a cool match in there, I guess. It's just this storyline is it's very WWE, and I like what we were saying before. Braun Strowman came on TV. Bear in mind, this man is approximately 7 foot tall, and he is 300 pounds. Built like a train, this man. As they keep reminding us that he's a train with their choo-choo sounds that they throw on in the background. But so he. Oh my goodness. But so he's built like a train, this 7 foot man. And he comes on air and he said, genuinely makes me laugh. He said, "Oh, I've been bullied my whole life. I don't like you. You're a bully." And I'm 5'6", and I looked at this guy and I thought, who the hell is bullying you? Who is bullying him? I don't understand. Oh my goodness! Like, could you really imagine anyone trying to take this guy's lunch money? What? You wouldn't dare! Look at the size of him. Oh, I just thought it was ridiculous. And I think actually Shane is quite a serviceable heel. I think he actually, do you know what? He does do quite well in the heel role because he does have that kind of douchey kind of thing going on, and the entitled thing as well. And do you know what? Shane McMahon works really hard, and he performs some great matches. He's had some good matches, and he does do some really cool stunts, and he's a real risk taker. Braun also works very hard. He's a great big man. He does some really cool stuff. It will be great to see that match. I'm sure it'll be quite a spectacle. The storyline isn't. It's not really doing it for me.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's one of those where we're not quite sure what to do with Braun. We don't want to see him against Drew McIntyre. We don't know who else he could work with. Randy Orton is obviously working with The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. So let's bring in Shane. Let's see if we can make something out of nothing. That's the only really answer I have to that. And then speaking of Randy Orton and The Fiend and Bray Wyatt, I mean, listen, Jackson, I said it on Instagram. Was I watching Friday the 13th? Was I watching Nightmare on Elm Street? I mean, do we even know if that's Bray Wyatt underneath all that like mummy wrap, that toilet paper wrap? I mean, that was also bizarre to say the least.
Yes. It was very strange. I mean, I'm a huge mark for The Fiend. I love seeing him come out. And I think the gimmick is gold. Like, it's real gold. It's amazing how he come up with that. All the details. It's crazy. And him getting burnt and coming back with a burnt mask. And that's quite a cool concept. Again, I think it's just an execution thing. I think, like, that character, being burnt alive and coming back and having this crazy comeback through fire and stuff is quite a cool story. And WWE has a great history of doing those kind of stories quite well. Like we saw The Undertaker, Kane, and Aleister Black on NXT had some really good stuff done like that too. But I just, I don't know what you thought, man, but like I wasn't huge on the get up. I just thought like the mask but being burnt was kind of cool, but I didn't like the way it completely looked. I think they tried to make it look like it had been melting, but it just kind of, something about it.
I tell you the truth, Jackson, I'm just not feeling it. To me, I feel like it's not doing it for me. It's not doing it for me. To me, what are we going to see? Bray Wyatt all of a sudden at WrestleMania, like nothing happened to him and he's going to rip all this stuff off. I mean, realistically, if you're going to keep it like that, this would have to go on for months. I mean, even remember when Randy Orton got burned and all of a sudden the next week it was like nothing ever happened. I mean, to me, I'm just not into it. I'll be honest with you. I know some people are really into this, but for me, it's not doing anything for me. To me, it's going on too long. It's too cartoonish. And it's just, to me, almost like Braun and Shane. I mean, Braun, how can anybody have bullied Braun? I mean, is Shane really going to be the guy that's brought out the worst in Braun's show? I mean, really, what do you think's going to happen here at WrestleMania? Yeah. Braun is going to kill Shane McMahon. Shane's going to do the elbow drop. He's going to be a chicken heel. Okay, fine. And then Randy and Bray, I mean, I could see Randy getting a win, but then it draws the feud out. I mean, part of me thinks like, well, where do you go from here with these two guys? So like, I'm just not feeling it. But there was something that I actually was feeling, and we were talking about this off the air, and we finally have now got to see Rhea Ripley as she's now debuted on Raw, and what a statement that she made in her debut on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I think it's really cool. Seeing her on the main roster finally is great. She is so deserving of that spot. She had one of the best NXT title runs in history. She had such a good run on NXT. And I think a lot of people were kind of let down by her and Flair at Mania. And not so much the match, just the fact that Charlotte won. I never really got that. I think Charlotte is, she's Charlotte Flair. She's a 9-time world champion. She didn't need to go back to NXT. It was different in Balor's case. I think that character on the main roster kind of needed a revamping. I don't think Charlotte Flair needed that. I never understood her run, and she lost it so quickly as well. So it's been very, very overdue. I'm really glad to see her there, and to see her straight away in the main event for Mania against Asuka will be incredible. I think Asuka needed some legitimate opponents. She's kind of cleaned out that entire roster. There's not really anyone believable to go against her in that role. So it was the best decision for me.
Have we seen the end of the Hurt Business?
Oh, man, I really hope not. I really wanted to see Lashley go into Mania as champ and the Hurt Business go into Mania as champs. I thought that was where it's going. I thought that feels so big. It completely legitimized. And I like New Day winning, and their match with AJ Styles, that will probably over-deliver. But I don't think it's the right time to be breaking up the Hurt Business. And it seems like that's what they're doing, which to me is very premature. I think right before Mania, I think after Mania, sure. If Lashley loses the title, if they had lost the championships at Mania, say, or something, maybe that's the time to do it. Because obviously Lashley was always going to be the breakup star of that group. You couldn't really stop that. But I just think it was very premature. There's a lot of distance left in that group. And it's been so great to see them run together and reach the top levels of each division with the title. So I really hope it's not, but I feel like it is going that way.
Yeah, what a tough break, Jackson, to lose the titles right before WrestleMania, and you held the titles a while. You're like, I'm going to get that WrestleMania payday, and now all of a sudden you might not even be on the card. I mean, that is a tremendous loss, and on top of that, we saw with what happened to them on Raw, and then going over to AEW here, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to AEW, and I got to talk about this first, Jackson, because this has been on my mind for quite a while. We got to see the first promo of the Pinnacle and MJF, and I gotta say, Jackson, they made quite a statement. We got to see FTR in the ring, and I think that this team's here to stay.
Yeah, I watched that promo, and MJF with FTR, Wardlow, and Sean Spears and Tully Blanchard. Oh my goodness, it was so good. It was so well done. When they first said, I'm building an inner circle on my own, I was kind of, okay, this is interesting. But yeah, I was just kind of like, where's this going? And then when I saw them all stood in the ring together, and all they do look very good together. I think Wardlow is this huge dominant force. You have FTR, clearly one of the best tag teams, of the current day. And they are the kind of spiritual reincarnation of Tully and Arn, obviously, back in their day. And then you have Sean Spears, who I do really like. I really think Sean Spears is a great worker, and he has a lot to offer. He had a great run in WWE. He never really got his chance. And I think there's something he can definitely give. I think out of the group, when I first looked, I was kind of like, do you fit there? I don't know. But I think maybe it's something in time we'll see if he grows into with Tully by his side. And then MJF, I mean, what a promo. This guy, I think it was about roughly, we'll say, a 10-minute segment. I think maybe just short, 8-9. And it didn't feel that long at all. He's a very gifted speaker. He's very, very good at that. He kind of went through a lot of different emotions. He took us through the story. He built up every single person in that group. He sold us completely on the Pinnacle and himself as the leader. To think he's only been on TV in a year is crazy, because he is an absolute professional. And then, see, this is my personal favourite thing of the Pinnacle. Tully Blanchard in the back. Just, he really gets wrestling. Like, I know he's been doing it for a while, but I mean, this guy just completely understands his role. He completely understands what to say, how to move, his mannerisms, everything is so just on the money every single time. Just watching him, even sometimes just clutching at his ring, and kind of, he brings something to that group. He really does bring this kind of air that it's so hard to kind of put your finger on what it is, but he really brings that kind of, obviously there's the veteran as well, the prestige, but he just brings that kind of this higher level to the group. It's amazing. I really love his work. But yeah, I thought they're absolutely incredible.
I think they all play an important role. And I think what you've seen also is a comeback in the wrestling manager or guy on the outside. We've seen Jake the Snake Roberts with Lance Archer. We've seen Arn Anderson as Cody Rhodes as coach. Yeah. We've obviously seen Tully Blanchard. If you want to call Sting in that role, I mean, I don't know if I'd call Sting the active wrestler the way he was 20 years ago. You could maybe throw in Sting. Taz certainly is somebody else you could throw in this. So AEW, you see a lot of that. And I always enjoyed the wrestling manager. I always thought it was important to have. And I know you see that a lot in the UK in the wrestling scene. So I'm very happy that that's back. And speaking of guys who are back, are returning to the ring. And we saw it on Dynamite that Christian is going to be back in the ring for the first time in 7 years in his first true singles match against Frankie Kazarian. I mean, Jackson, your thoughts on the fact that we're getting to see Christian, and it's not going to be on Double or Nothing. We're getting it on free TV. We're getting it on TNT, on AEW Dynamite. I mean, talk about your thoughts on Christian and his long overdue return to the ring.
Brilliant. I love Christian. Christian was always one of my favourites growing up. I actually prefer him over Edge. I always did. I actually felt not only as a wrestler, but on the charisma scale as well, he would kind of fit me more. I know Edge is a very, very, very good heel, but Christian, I just connected with Christian more. And yeah, I think it's really great. And you know what? I'm glad to see him make that move from WWE to AEW. I think if they weren't going to give him the kind of last run that he very, very truly deserves, that he's in the right place. And I think we're going to get to see him back that up, that outwork everyone, because if he's wanting to come back and put on some great matches, AEW's the place, because I mean, there's some incredible talent and it's really exciting. And this is why I love AEW. The handling of that story is so great, because he came out and they get interrupted it. So he finally gets to cut his backstage promo, which was incredible. It's everything we want from Christian. And then Kazarian comes in, he interrupts, they build to a match. And the great thing is, see, instead of just seeing Christian straight away in that main event slot where perhaps people might say, oh, how did he deserve this, etc., etc., they're letting Christian naturally come in and be built up for that position. He said it himself. He says in the promo, he says, you know, I know I need to get some wins under my belt. That was perfect for me. It was that tiny little wrinkle that just kind of puts that story together and makes it make sense. And because we know it's going to be Christian and Omega, but we want to see him earn it to get there. And then in the process, we get to see him back up what he's saying of outwork everyone. We get to see what we've wanted to see for years, and see Christian go in ring and on great matches. And we know he can. And I'm sure him and Kazarian will tear the house down. I can't wait for the match.
Absolutely. And what you like about AEW is they allow you to see the character be built up in the ring. Wins and losses mean something in AEW. WWE, you can lose 100 times and they'll just glance it. They'll just overlook it and forget about it. In AEW, wins and losses and in-ring competition mean something. So I'm with you. I kind of like to see it almost like in boxing, how a fighter works his way up the ranks. And I think that we're going to get to see that with Christian, and we're going to get to see him work up the ranks. It also helps some of these talent, because I think any talent is going to benefit with somebody like Christian because of his in-ring experience and how many matches he's been in, how many important matches that he's been. So he can give a lot, I think, to the wrestler that's going to square off with him that hasn't had that experience of being in the ring with him. And listen, Christian and Kenny Omega, I'm salivating already at that. So I'm chomping at the bits for that that. And speaking of Kenny Omega here, before we get your closing thoughts here, Jackson, I mean, Kenny Omega, I see him on Impact, and then I see him on Dynamite. And while I enjoyed the match with Matt Sydal, I was almost scratching my head on how things ended off with Kenny Omega. But is possibly Kenny Omega actually attempting to kill two birds with one stone? Because we see one storyline with Kenny Omega and might have actually seen another storyline involving his old friends, the Young Bucks and the Good Brothers.
I'm really interested in this, and I'm really digging it. I think, we did kind of see a similar thing in the past, New Japan, when they kind of had that dissension of Young Bucks and Kenny, but it was very different. Kenny was the baby face, and it just played out, and it was, Ibushi's involvement in that. But I really, really like this, and it's actually a much better told story than just putting the Good Brothers in Young Bucks, because I think this is all really leading to Double or Nothing, Young Bucks, Good Brothers. I think that was always where it was going to go. We know the Good Brothers were always slotted for a good spot in AEW had they gone sooner, and I think it is a huge match, and they built it the perfect way. It comes down to Bullet Club versus Bullet Club type thing. Well, in this case, Young Bucks don't want to be part of that anymore, and I like that they came down, kind of saved Moxley, and then now Laredo Kid as well. So I think it's interesting, and obviously Don Callis kind of being that guy who's kind of pushing them further apart is very smart and very interesting too. I think it's really well told, and I like that it kind of calls back that New Japan storyline, and just seeing kind of Matt Jackson and Kenny kind of face off and have that interaction, and the lack of trust, and then throwing up the too sweet, but they don't want to do it, and they keep going too far. The Young Bucks have to come out and save the person they're attacking. I think it's really cool, and it's going to lead to some really, really good matches. And I think the Good Brothers and Young Bucks could tear it up with Double or Nothing if that's where it's going.
I'd love to see that, but let me ask you one last question on Kenny Omega. Do you think it's necessary to have Rich Swann on AEW to increase the believability of Rich Swann possibly winning this match next month against Kenny Omega?
I think that's a very good question. I mean, I don't know if it would help his believability, but I think it would definitely help build the match. I mean, to see him kind of wrestle maybe someone in that roster or a few guys that would be incredible, because Rich Swann's an incredible wrestler. I don't know if it's the believability factor, because like me and you discussed it before, I just think Rich Swann isn't coming out of that match for the titles. It's not going to happen. He's not beating anyone. You know what I mean? It's not happening. I mean, even if it had been Moose, I mean, I don't think Moose would have been coming out that much with the belts either. Yeah, Omega's on the run of his life, realistically. And I think, to be totally honest, no one's really going to touch Omega. And they gave us a tiny thing towards it. He spoke about these champions, right? And he says, not even Ibushi. And I don't think that was just a throwaway comment, because I think with Ibushi holding the New Japan title and then Kenny Omega holding the AEW championship, I think straight away I thought, yeah, that's building to them too at Wrestle Kingdom. And now we know that it can happen, because Kenta came to AEW, he's name dropped him on Impact. We know it can happen, and I think that's where this is all going, and that's really what I want to see.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that I couldn't see Kenny losing to Rich Swann, but you almost got to still build the match up. And I understand your point. I certainly understand why. I see where you're coming from, and I think we all want to see Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom, and there is a possibility of him holding several world titles. And I do fully agree with you. Kenny is on the run that he will probably never have again. He is on a run right now. And Kenny was always a great wrestler. He's always been one of the best workers. But I think now this last 5 or 6 months, I think has put him in the stratosphere. Yeah. It's put him in the Mount Rushmore. So Kenny's on another level right now. Obviously, we're looking forward to seeing what happens with Kenny. And I'll be certainly curious to see how Rich Swann responds on Impact next week. And we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, with you, and about all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. Has been out almost 2 weeks away from Wrestlemania, so we're extremely excited to talk about all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling with you. And for you, my friend, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts. As always, plug where our listeners can get in touch with you. And I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for us. In addition to being the heart of pro wrestling and the number one high flyer around, you are an integral reason as to why we're the number one global sports show and on the number one global radio station on Sportinarium. So you know the drill, my friend. friend, plug where our listeners can get in touch with you. Anything else you want to share to our worldwide audience, please do. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, just want to say thanks very much for having me, man. It's always a pleasure. It's a huge honor as well to come on the show. I love chatting to you, and we always have a great time and shoot the breeze, man. And yeah, if you like what we were talking about and you want to see more, then just go to my Instagram and my Twitter, which is jjacksonhart1_. And then on Facebook, it's Jackson Hart. And also, as well, if I know there's a lot of sports guys who are watching this right now, so if you're into your fitness, if you need some gym tops, if you need some resistance bands, if you need liquid chalk, if you need anything like that, all across the world, there's a really great brand. A couple of my friends are running called @T360 Sport. You can follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, the like too. And yeah, they're going to sort you out for your fitness needs. And it's really great. I got some of the resistance bands the other day, and they're some of the best ones I've ever used. So it's really great stuff. And yeah, if you want to catch up on the journey of what we're doing on wrestling at the minute, just go and follow @UPW and @Sacrifice Pro, and you can catch me on there real soon, and as soon as British Wrestling comes back. So again, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, Jackson. We're looking forward to seeing you back in the ring. We're getting closer to that date. I know we're getting closer to normalcy. So in addition to talking about everything else going on in the world of professional wrestling, we're looking forward to recapping some of your matches once again. So cannot wait to do that, and looking forward to speaking with you next week. And thank you, my friend.
Thank you very much.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our Heart of Wrestling, Jackson Hart, one of the top UK wrestlers around, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportinarium, the #1 global radio station. And we were just with Jackson Hart, one of the top wrestlers around, talking all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Bryce.